What's up, bro? I hope you're doing well. And today I'm going to give you the three most important steps to make the best notes that you can. Before we get into this, let's make clear why notes are extremely important to you. So, if you're not taking notes, then what are you doing? Because notes are probably the best thing that you could be doing with your time in terms of consuming your content. If you are not taking notes, then if you read a book, you are only going to absorb around 5% of the knowledge which is found in that book. So basically, that's a very low ROI activity, and you will only remember like one or two things from the book. I remember doing this with the first book I read, which is called The Magic of Thinking Big, and I haven't read that book in over a year, and I don't remember like anything, like at all. But the first book that I did read, where I took notes, called Psycho-Cybernetics, I remember quite a few of the concepts in there. The torpedo mechanism, the fact that man has a machine and your self-image matters, stuff like that. I remember a lot more. And that is simply because when you take notes, notes can be used in the future. It's very low effort to take some notes of the things that you are just consuming in your everyday life: books, podcasts, videos. I don't really care what it is. And it's very vital that you do this simply because in a future point when you're like, okay, but what did this podcast, what did this book say again? All you have to do is open up that page, look at it for a few moments, which is less than 5 minutes, and you have the whole contents in terms of like the most important points in your head all over again. And that's why notes are extremely important. All right, with that out of the way, if you're already taking notes, then you are doing a very good job. And I want to applaud you for that, because writing things down that are important in the books, I'm going to use books as the perfect example for the whole video here. If you just write everything down, then it's going to be very, very easy for you to just look at what was said. And this also allows you to internalize the concepts which you write down a lot better, simply because writing things down allows your mind to remember them a lot easier, because you have an image to attach to something that you remember. But what if I told you that there were three more ways that you can improve your note taking by a lot? You might already be doing them, but I want you to be conscious of them. The first step is called active recall. Active recall is basically that you read a passage of a book and you take that passage and paraphrase it into your own words. Now, what does this do? Basically, when you write things down, of course, you're going to be remembering them. But if you just write it down word for word, then you're basically like when you're in school, when you're copy pasting everything from your friend's homework and you don't understand anything. If you, however, use your own words, if you're like, okay, instead of, let's say, reframe, let's use the word rewire. That might be the very simple example. If you can shorten it without losing any of the integrity, also a very, very nice way to paraphrase it. If you can just change how you say it in terms of using different vocabulary, using different ways of expression, maybe like maybe like even making a small drawing of how it would work, that will increase your own understanding. And that's basically the goal, isn't it? You want to gain some information out of the things that you are consuming. Those things that you're consuming are going to be much easier to remember if you don't just blatantly copy it, but if you add your own essence to it and if you make it much more memorable for yourself. Of course, this won't be applicable everywhere. There will be some times when you have to copy it word for word, because one, you might not have the necessary vocabulary to explain it the different way, and number two, there might just not be anything that could be substituted for words or concepts or anything really. But overall, this is a very, very good way to deepen your understanding of the things that you're consuming, and it is a very, very good way of gaining more information and absorbing it a lot easier as well. And yeah, that is our first step. Now moving on to the second one. When going through my old notes, I realized that I was doing a lot of things right. First off, I was just generally taking notes, and two, I was paraphrasing everything that I was really seeing, to be honest. Trying to use original words, trying to understand the concepts the way that I can. And it was working very, very well. Until one thing happened. And this only happens if you've already taken notes on quite a few things. You will not be able to see this when you just start because you have to revisit your old notes. And this is the fact that your old notes may not be intelligible anymore. Let me give you an example. This is what I got from the Slight Edge, and there's basically this example with two frogs. I'm just going to tell the story. There are these two frogs, and they're in the swamp, and one day they venture out of the swamp to go to like a dairy farm. And in this dairy farm, they find like a bucket full of dairy, and they're like, oh, "How cool is this?" And then they start eating up all the dairy and stuff. And when they're full, they're like, "Okay, bro, let's get out of here. Let's get back to the swamp." But the problem is, they can't get out. So frog one is like, "Okay, well, it's time to die then. I'm gonna die a happy frog." And he salutes like this, and then drowns down into the dairy. But the other frog is like, "Hell no, I'm not gonna give up." And he like paddles all over, like trying to get out of the bucket. And guess what? He ends up churning the butter, has a solid surface to stand on, and jumps out. Gets back to the swamp, but the other frog did not survive. Point of that story is to never give up and everything. The story isn't the important part here. Wait, even though I just spent a freaking minute telling it, I'm sorry. Anyway, the important thing here is that when I looked at that story in the first time, I wrote down never give up, see the frogs as an example. And I was like, when I went back 1 month later to see those notes again, I was like, see the frogs? What? So I went back to the Slight Edge, read that passage again, and I was like, ah, okay. And when making this video, I remembered like, wait a minute, this is a pretty interesting point, because if you can't make your notes back then intelligible to where you are right now, then there's not much point in making them, is there? So the important thing about taking notes is each time that you see that you're taking notes, ask yourself, will my future self understand this without knowing the previous context? What does this mean? If there's an example with the frogs, if you just say, see the frog example, then your future self will likely not understand. Like, yeah, if you do it once with the frog example, okay, maybe then yes. But if you use examples quite a lot, like once per page or twice per page, then there's going to be a lot of examples, especially if you're reading like over 10 books every single year. And you're just not going to remember all of them. And the important thing is that you make the concept intelligible. Make the concept understandable without knowing the context. If you took another person and told them like, yeah, this is the concept that I want to tell you. It's the concept of never give up. Then yeah, okay, that's good. But stating that example will simply just not help that much if you don't know the context. So if you want to state an example, simply write the example in like a shortened form down without losing any of the integrity. Because if you just write frogs, then you're not going to understand. Frogs in swamp, in butter, then maybe yes. Even more detail, then the chances go up every single time. Right, and with that, we move on to step number 3, which is short and conciseness. Shortness and conciseness, there you go. If you're writing something down, you want to make it as short and concise as possible, bring it straight to the point as best you can. If there's a concept that really needs a lot of explanation, then write it down. Okay, that's fair enough. But if you can shorten it down to just like one bullet point, maybe like 2, from, let's say, a whole paragraph, then that is a very, very good job. You should learn to do this simply because this will allow you, even in your own life, to not drag things out over a long time, but simply to state what is important and to state what really matters out of the whole context. I know that I did this a little bit wrong in step 2 in this video, because I like completely just told the story and went a little bit in circles. I'm going to be completely honest, but this will allow you to practice that very, very well. I've actually made a short about this exact concept where we have a comparison between 2 people. Scenario is that you miss a lesson because you have to go to, like, let's say the friggin' doctor. Then you come back to school and you're like, hey guys, what did I miss? The nerd comes to you and explains the whole lesson in 30 minutes. He's like, yeah, we did this. Oh yeah, don't forget that. Oh yeah, that as well. And he takes like, yeah, half an hour to tell you the whole thing. Then another guy comes to you and says like, hey, yeah, this is what we did. That's basically it. He shortens down the whole contents to just 1 minute of like talking instead of 30 minutes like the nerd. And that is a very vital skill that many people, in my opinion, don't have because a lot of people like to drag things out. And honestly, I'm not the best example of this because I have a feeling that this video, if you're still watching, I feel like I dragged this out quite a bit. And through this improvisation, of course, comes the fact that not like this isn't completely scripted. I'm not like looking at a script reading word for word, but this is like coming out of me and like having some bullet points, and that's basically all I have to go on. But this will allow you to condense information more and more the more you do it. So yeah, with that said, those are the 3 steps to making better notes, and I really hope that you can take these away. And the most important thing is that you actually use these, because if you don't, then I'm sorry, but this video was basically useless. You've wasted what, like 8 minutes of your time? A little bit more, a little bit less, I don't really know. But yeah, use these things because this will take your notes to the next level. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. Make sure to subscribe.